My name is Lauren, and I never thought I would be the kind of daughter who dreaded her own birthday. But there I was, on a Friday night in late October, sitting in the back corner of a restaurant called the Copper Hen in downtown Nashville. The place had those Edison bulbs hanging from the ceiling and exposed brick walls and mismatched silverware that was supposed to feel rustic and charming. My mom picked it. She always picks. I was turning 32 years old, and I had spent the entire afternoon trying to talk myself into being excited. My boyfriend of 4 years, Ryan, sat next to me, scrolling through his phone under the table. My older sister, Chloe, was across from me with her husband, Mark. And my mom sat at the head of the table, like she always does, like she is the queen of every room she enters. The waitress had just brought out a round of drinks when my mom looked at me with that particular expression she saves for when she is about to say something she thinks is helpful, but is actually just cruel. Her name is Diane. Diane has short blonde hair cut into a sharp bob, and she wears cream-colored blazers even to casual dinners. She looked at me over her glass of white wine, and she said, "Lauren, I have to be honest with you. Those 6 words have never once led to anything good in my entire life." I put my fork down. I already knew what was coming. Not the exact words, but the shape of them, the disappointment, the comparison. The way she can make me feel like a child who failed a spelling test, even though I am a grown woman with a job and a home and a life that I worked very hard to build. Chloe was looking at her phone, too. She always looks at her phone when my mom starts on me. Mark just stared at the breadbasket. Ryan kept scrolling. Nobody ever stops her. Nobody ever says, "Diane, that is enough." And I have never been brave enough to stop her myself, so I just sat there and waited for the impact. "Lauren, you are 32 years old," she said. She set her wine glass down and folded her hands on the table like she was about to deliver a performance review. "You are 32 years old and you work at a nonprofit making $48,000 a year. You live in a 1-bedroom apartment with a boyfriend who hasn't proposed. You drive a car that is 11 years old. And I just don't understand when you are going to start taking your life seriously." The table went quiet. Even the waitress seemed to disappear. I could hear the ice clinking in my glass, and the low hum of conversation from other tables, and the sound of my own heartbeat in my ears. I looked at Ryan. He finally looked up from his phone, but he didn't say anything. He just gave me this tight little smile like he felt bad for me, but not bad enough to actually speak. "Mom," I said. My voice came out smaller than I wanted it to. "Can we not do this tonight? It is my birthday." "That is exactly why we're doing it tonight," she said.
Birthdays are for reflection, for looking at where you are and where you should be. When I was your age, I had a house, I had 2 children, I had a husband with a stable career. You have none of those things. You have a boyfriend who works at a brewery and a job that pays nothing, and you just seem perfectly fine with mediocrity." "Ryan works in marketing at the brewery," I said. "It is a real job. He has a degree." "A marketing degree from a state school that he uses to sell beer to college kids," she said. "Lauren, I am not trying to hurt you. I am trying to wake you up. You were such a bright girl. You had so much potential. And now look at you. You are 32. 32. That is not young anymore. The clock is ticking on everything. Your career, your fertility, your ability to attract a man who can actually provide for you." Chloe looked up from her phone. She is 3 years older than me, and she has the perfect life that my mom always wanted for both of us. She married Mark, who is a dentist. They have a 4-bedroom house in Franklin. They have a golden retriever named Winston. She works part-time as a real estate agent when she feels like it. Chloe looked at me with something that might have been sympathy, but felt more like pity. She didn't say anything. She never says anything. Mark cleared his throat and asked the waitress for another beer.
Ryan put his hand on my knee under the table, but it felt mechanical, like a reflex, not comfort. I tried to defend myself. I said, "Mom, I like my job. I help people. I run the volunteer program at a domestic violence shelter. That matters. That is not nothing." She waved her hand like she was brushing away a fly. "Of course it matters," she said, "but it doesn't pay the bills. It doesn't build a future. You cannot live on meaning, Lauren. You cannot retire on good intentions." And meanwhile, Ryan is over there talking about starting a food truck. A food truck? Like that is a plan for a 35-year-old man. Ryan finally spoke. He said, "I have always wanted to do my own thing, Diane. It is not just a food truck. It is a concept. Wood-fired pizza with local ingredients. I have a whole business plan. My mom looked at him the way you look at a child who insists they can fly if they just jump off the garage roof. She didn't even bother responding. She just turned back to me and said, "See, this is what I mean. You have surrounded yourself with people who enable your lack of ambition. You need to think about what you actually want from your life, not what feels comfortable, not what feels safe, what you actually want." I felt something crack inside me. Not break, crack, like a hairline fracture spreading through bone. I had spent my whole life trying to make her proud. I got good grades. I went to a good college.
I chose a career that helps people because I thought that was something she would respect. I fell in love with a man who is kind and funny and loyal, even if he doesn't make dentist money. And none of it was ever enough. None of it would ever be enough. I looked at her and I said, "I am happy. Does that count for nothing? I am actually happy." She laughed. Not a mean laugh exactly, a dismissive laugh. The kind of laugh that says, "Oh, you poor naive thing." "Happy?" she said. "Happiness is not a plan. Happiness does not pay for a nursing home when you are old and alone. You need to be smart, Lauren. You need to be strategic. You are running out of time." That is when she said it, the line that I knew I would remember for the rest of my life. She looked me dead in the eyes and she said, "Lauren, you are a disappointment. You have always been a disappointment, and I am tired of pretending otherwise." Chloe finally looked up from her phone. She opened her mouth like she was going to say something, but then she looked at my mom and closed it again. Ryan's hand tightened on my knee, but he still didn't speak. Mark was very interested in his beer bottle. The waitress came back to ask if we wanted another round, and nobody answered her. I sat there for a long moment. I could feel tears burning behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I would not give her that satisfaction. I would not cry at my own birthday dinner because my mother called me a disappointment. I would not. I stood up. I pulled my purse strap over my shoulder, and I took my credit card out of my wallet and I put it on the table. I said I am covering my own dinner and my own drinks, and then I am leaving. "Don't be dramatic," Diane said. "Sit down. We haven't even ordered entrees." I looked at Ryan. I said, "Are you coming?" He hesitated. That hesitation lasted maybe 2 seconds, but it felt like an hour. He looked at my mom. He looked at Chloe. He looked at me. And then he said, "Babe, maybe we should just stay. Finish dinner. Let things cool down." I felt that crack inside me split a little deeper. I said, "Okay," and then I walked out. The October air hit my face, and it felt like the first real thing I had felt all night. I stood in the parking lot for a minute, just breathing. My hands were shaking. My chest felt tight. I got in my 11-year-old car, and I drove to my one-bedroom apartment, and I sat on my couch in the dark and waited for Ryan to come home. He came home 3 hours later. He smelled like beer, and he was apologetic, but also kind of annoyed. He said, "You shouldn't have left like that. Your mom is just trying to help. She loves you. She just has a weird way of showing it." I said, "She called me a disappointment, Ryan, on my birthday, at a restaurant." He sighed and sat down next to me on the couch. He picked up the remote and started flipping through channels. He said, "She is old school. That is just how she talks. You know that. You cannot let her get to you like this." I looked at the side of his face while he scrolled past a baseball game and a reality show and a movie we had already seen. I thought about the fact that he didn't defend me. Not once. Not when she insulted my job. Not when she insulted his job. Not when she called me a disappointment in front of him and my sister and her husband. He just sat there, like a passenger on a train that was going off a cliff. I said, "I want you to really hear what I am saying right now. She hurt me, and you didn't do anything." He turned to look at me. His eyes were tired. He said, "What was I supposed to do, Lauren? Argue with your mom at your birthday dinner? Make a scene? That would have made everything worse." "Worse for who?" I asked. "For you? Because it would have been uncomfortable for you? Because you might have had to sit in a little bit of tension while someone stood up for me?" He didn't answer. He just turned back to the TV. After a minute, he said, "I think you are overreacting." And then he went to bed. I stayed on the couch. I stayed there for a long time, staring at the ceiling and thinking about my life, about the choices I had made, about the people I had let into my heart.
about the way I had spent 32 years trying to earn love that should have been given to me for free. The next morning, I woke up on the couch with a stiff neck and a hollow feeling in my stomach. Ryan had already left for work. He left a note on the counter that said, "Sorry about last night. Love you."
It was written on a torn piece of paper towel. I went to work. I ran the volunteer program at the shelter like I did every day. I trained new volunteers on how to answer the crisis line. I organized the donation closet. I sat with a woman named Teresa who had finally left her husband after 12 years of abuse, and I watched her drink coffee with shaking hands, and I thought about how brave she was, how hard it is to leave something even when you know it is killing you. I thought about my mom. I thought about Ryan. I thought about the word disappointment and the way it landed in my chest like a stone dropped into deep water. I did not call my mom the next day, or the day after that, or the week after that. She called me 3 times. She left voicemails. Her tone shifted from annoyance to confusion to something that almost sounded like concern, but not quite. She said, "Lauren, you cannot just disappear. We are family. We need to talk about what happened. You are being childish." I did not call her back. Chloe texted me. She said, "Mom is upset. You should really call her. She didn't mean it the way it came out. You know how she is." I wrote back, "I know exactly how she is. That is the problem." She sent back a thumbs up emoji, and then nothing else. Ryan noticed that I was quieter than usual. He noticed that I was sleeping on the couch more often than not. He noticed, but he didn't ask. He just tiptoed around me like I was a bomb that might go off. He brought home takeout.
He put on my favorite movies. He did all the little things that made him a good boyfriend on paper. But he never once said, "You were right to be upset." He never once said, "Your mom was wrong." He never once said, "I should have defended you." So I let the silence grow. I let it fill the space between us, like snow accumulating in a driveway. Every day a little deeper. Every day harder to dig out. 2 weeks after the birthday dinner, my mom showed up at my apartment. She didn't call first, she didn't text, she just knocked on my door at 7 o'clock on a Tuesday evening while Ryan was at work and I was eating ramen straight from the pot. I opened the door and there she was, Diane, in a cashmere sweater and pearl earrings, holding a bottle of wine like a peace offering. She looked at my sweatpants and my messy bun and the ramen pot in my hand, and I could see her making calculations behind her eyes. Judging. Always judging. She said, "Can I come in?" I almost said no. I wanted to say no, but some part of me still wanted her approval, some broken part that I could not fix no matter how hard I tried. So I stepped aside and let her in. She looked around my apartment like she had never seen it before. The small kitchen, the tiny living room, the stack of books on the coffee table, the blanket Ryan left draped over the arm of the couch. She set the wine bottle on the counter and she turned to face me. She said, "I have been thinking about what I said at dinner." I waited. She said, "I was harsh." I admit that, but Lauren, someone has to be honest with you. Someone has to tell you the truth. Your friends won't tell you, your boyfriend won't tell you, but I am your mother. It is my job to push you to be better. I set the ramen pot on the stove. I crossed my arms over my chest. "Mom, do you even know what you called me?" She blinked. She said, "I told you that you were wasting your potential." "No," I said. "You called me a disappointment. You said I have always been a disappointment. Do you remember that? Do you remember saying those exact words?" She looked away for a second. Just a second. When she looked back, her expression had shifted into something harder. She said, "Fine. I said it. And I am sorry if it hurt your feelings. But disappointment is not the same as not loving you. I love you more than anything. That is why I cannot just sit back and watch you settle for a life that is beneath you." "A life that is beneath me?" I repeated. My voice came out flat, dead, like I was reading words off a page instead of feeling them. "Yes," she said, "a life that is beneath you. You work at a shelter for minimum wage. You date a man who will never be able to take care of you. You live in this tiny apartment that smells like takeout. This is not the life I dreamed for you, Lauren. This is not the life your father and I sacrificed for." My dad left when I was 14.
He walked out on a Tuesday afternoon, and I never saw him again, except for Christmas cards that stopped coming after I turned 18. The idea that he sacrificed anything for me was laughable, but my mom has always rewritten history to fit whatever story she wants to tell. I said, "Mom, I need you to leave." She looked genuinely shocked. She said, "What?" "I need you to leave," I said again. My voice was steady. It surprised me. "I am not going to stand here and let you tell me that my life is beneath me, that my work doesn't matter, that Ryan isn't good enough, that I am a disappointment. I am done. I am so done." She stared at me for a long moment. Then she picked up her purse and walked to the door. She turned back and said, "I hope you remember this moment when you are 40 years old and alone and wishing you had listened to me." And then she left. I locked the door behind her and leaned my forehead against the wood, and I cried. Not pretty crying, ugly crying. The kind where you cannot breathe and your face swells up and you make sounds you did not know you could make. I cried for the little girl who just wanted her mom to be proud of her. I cried for the teenager whose dad abandoned her. I cried for the woman who had spent her whole life trying to earn love that should have been unconditional. I cried until I had nothing left. The next 3 weeks were quiet, eerily quiet. My mom stopped calling. Chloe stopped texting. Ryan and I existed in the same apartment like two ghosts haunting the same house. We still slept in the same bed, but we didn't touch. We still ate meals together, but we didn't talk. The silence between us was loud enough to drown out everything else. I thought about leaving him. I thought about it every single day. That leaving is hard. Leaving means admitting that you chose wrong. Leaving means starting over. Leaving means being alone. And after what my mom said, I was terrified of being alone. Because what if she was right? What if I was a disappointment? What if I had settled? What if I was 32 years old with nothing to show for it? So I stayed. I stayed in the silence. I stayed in the apartment. I stayed with a man who watched my mother tear me apart and said nothing. I stayed because staying was easier than leaving, and I hated myself for it. Then something happened, something I did not see coming. My phone rang on a Thursday afternoon while I was at work. It was Chloe. I almost didn't answer, but something in her voice when I saw the caller ID made me pick up. She never called me during work hours. I said hello. She said, "Lauren, you need to come to Mom's house, right now." Her voice was strange, tight, like she was holding something back. I said, "Why? What is going on?" She said, "Just come, please. It is important." And then she hung up. I stood in the supply closet of the shelter, surrounded by boxes of donated winter coats, and I felt a cold dread crawl up my spine. Something was wrong. Something had happened. And even though I was still angry at my mom, even though I hadn't spoken to her in weeks, even though she had called me a disappointment and meant it, I got in my car and I drove. My mom lives in a big house in Belmead. It is the kind of house that has a circular driveway and columns on the front porch and a lawn that gets mowed twice a week by a service. I pulled into that driveway on that Thursday afternoon and I saw Chloe's SUV already parked there. And Ryan's truck. Ryan's truck. Why was Ryan at my mom's house? I sat in my car for a minute with my hands on the steering wheel. The October leaves were falling around me, red and orange and yellow, beautiful in a way that felt wrong given how my stomach was churning. I got out. I walked up the front steps. I opened the door without knocking because I have done that 1,000 times in my life. The first thing I saw was my mom sitting on the couch in her living room. She was crying, actual tears running down her face. I had seen my mom cry maybe 3 times in my entire life. She was holding a tissue and dabbing at her eyes, and her makeup was smeared, and she looked nothing like the woman who had sat at the head of the table judging me 3 weeks ago. The second thing I saw was Chloe, standing by the fireplace with her arms crossed.
She looked pale. She looked like she hadn't slept. The third thing I saw was Ryan. He was standing near the kitchen doorway.
And next to him was a woman I had never seen before. She was pretty in an Instagram kind of way. Long brown hair, fake eyelashes, a tight dress that seemed out of place for a Thursday afternoon at my mom's house. She was holding Ryan's hand. I stopped walking. I stopped breathing. I looked at Ryan, and then at the woman, and then back at Ryan. "What the hell?" I said. Ryan opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The woman squeezed his hand like she was encouraging him to speak, like she was his cheerleader in this moment that was supposed to be about me. My mom stood up from the couch. She was still crying. She said, "Lauren, honey, I am so sorry. I am so, so sorry." I looked at her. I looked at Chloe. I looked at Ryan. I looked at the woman. And I said, "Someone better start talking right now, or I am walking out that door and I am never coming back." Chloe stepped forward. She said, "Lauren, there is something you need to know. About Ryan. About everything." I said, "I am listening." Ryan finally found his voice. He said, "Lauren, this is Megan. We have been seeing each other for about 6 months." 6 months. The words landed like bullets. 6 months. That meant May. That meant spring. That meant while I was planning his birthday party, while I was cooking him dinner, while I was sleeping next to him every night, while I was defending him to my mother, he had been with someone else. I said 6 months. He nodded. He wouldn't look me in the eyes. He kept staring at a spot on the carpet somewhere near my feet. He said, "I didn't plan it. It just happened. We met at a work thing, and one thing led to another, and I didn't know how to tell you." "A work thing?" I said. "You work at a brewery. You met her at a work thing?" Megan spoke. Her voice was high and nervous. She said, "I am really sorry. I didn't know about you at first. He said he was single. He said he was living with a roommate. He lied to me too." I looked at her and I felt nothing. Not anger. Not jealousy. Just nothing. She was a stranger. She didn't owe me anything. Ryan was the one who owed me everything. I turned back to Ryan. I said, "Why are you here? Why are you at my mother's house?" The room went very quiet. My mom stopped crying. Chloe looked at the floor. Ryan finally looked up and met my eyes, and I saw something in his face that I had never seen before. Shame. Real shame. But also something else. Something that looked like relief. Like he had been carrying a weight and he was finally putting it down. He said, "Your mom found out. She saw us together at a restaurant in Franklin about 2 weeks ago. She recognized my truck. She came inside, and she saw me with Megan." I turned to my mom. I said, "You knew. For 2 weeks and knew that my boyfriend was cheating on me and you didn't tell me?" My mom started crying again. She said, "I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to hurt you. We were already fighting. You weren't speaking to me."
I thought I could handle it myself. I thought I could talk to him, make him end it, fix it, without you ever having to know. "Fix it," I said. "You thought you could fix my boyfriend cheating on me without telling me, without asking me what I wanted? You just decided to handle it yourself like I am a child who cannot handle her own life?" Chloe said, "Lauren, calm down." She was trying to help. I snapped my head toward her. I said, "Do not tell me to calm down. Do not. You both knew. You both knew he was cheating on me, and you both decided that I didn't deserve to know. You took that choice away from me. That was not your choice to make." Megan let go of Ryan's hand. She took a step back like she was trying to disappear into the kitchen. Ryan ran his fingers through his hair. He looked smaller than I remembered, smaller and weaker, and so pathetic that I could not believe I had ever loved him. I said to Ryan, "You need to get your stuff out of the apartment by the end of the weekend. I will pack your things and leave them on the porch. If I see you again, it will be too soon." He said, "Lauren, please, let me explain.
I said, there is no explanation that makes this okay. 6 months. You looked me in the face for 6 months and lied. You sat next to me at my birthday dinner while my mother called me a disappointment, and you said nothing. Not just about her. About her. About her. You let me sit there feeling like I was the problem when you were the one who had already checked out.
You are a coward. You are a liar. And I never want to see you again. He tried to say something else, but I turned away from him. I turned to my mom. She was still crying. Her mascara was running down her cheeks in black streaks. She looked old. She looked tired. She looked like a woman who had spent her whole life trying to control everything and was finally realizing that control was an illusion. I said, "Mom, I am going to leave now, and I am going to take some time to figure out how I feel about all of this. About Ryan. About you. About the fact that you called me a disappointment, and then you kept a secret from me that you had no right to keep. I love you because you are my mother, but I don't like you very much right now, and I don't know when that is going to change." She reached for me. She said, "Lauren, please, don't leave like this." I stepped back. I said, "I have to." And then I walked out of that beautiful house with the circular driveway and the Collins on the porch, and I got in my 11-year-old car, and I drove to my 1-bedroom apartment, and I packed Ryan's things into trash bags. It took me 2 hours. I packed his clothes and his shoes and his collection of vinyl records and his laptop charger and his toothbrush and the stupid beard oil he spent $30 on. I put all of it on the porch. I locked the door, and then I sat down on the floor in the middle of my living room with my back against the couch, and I let the silence wash over me.
But it wasn't the same silence. This silence was different. This silence was mine. 22 days had passed since my mom called me a disappointment at my own birthday dinner. 22 days of silence and shame and self-doubt. 22 days of thinking, maybe she was right. Maybe I was a disappointment. Maybe I had settled. Maybe my life was beneath me. But now, I knew the truth. The truth was that Ryan had been cheating on me for 6 months. The truth was that my mom knew and didn't tell me. The truth was that Chloe knew and didn't tell me. The truth was that the people who were supposed to love me most in this world had been keeping secrets and telling lies and letting me believe that I was the problem. And the other truth, the one that hit me like a wave as I sat on that floor, surrounded by trash bags and grief. The other truth was that I wasn't a disappointment at all. I was a woman who had trusted people who didn't deserve her trust. I was a woman who had loved people who didn't know how to love her back. I was a woman who had spent 32 years trying to earn something that was never hers to earn in the first place. My phone buzzed. A text from Ryan. He said, "I am so sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I still love you." I read the words and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no hope. Just the hollow echo of a love that had died a long time ago. Probably before he even met Megan. Probably before my birthday dinner. Probably before I even realized it was dying.
I didn't write back. I turned my phone off. I put it face down on the coffee table, and I sat in the dark of my 1-bedroom apartment, and I let myself feel everything. The betrayal, the anger, the relief, the grief, the strange, unfamiliar sensation of being completely and utterly alone, but not lonely. Because here is the thing I learned in those 22 days. The thing that took my mother calling me a disappointment, and my boyfriend betraying me, and my sister staying silent to teach me. The only person who gets to decide if you are a disappointment is you. I decided I was not. I decided I was brave for staying in a job that mattered, even if it didn't pay well. I decided I was loyal for loving a man who didn't deserve it. I decided I was strong for surviving a childhood with a mother who measured worth in dollars and status and wedding rings. I decided I was enough. I had always been enough. I just forgot for a little while. The next morning, I woke up on the couch again. I woke up to sunlight streaming through my blinds and the sound of birds outside my window, and the knowledge that my life had changed forever. Ryan was gone. My mom and I had a canyon between us that might never close. My sister had shown me that her silence was a choice, and she had chosen wrong. But I was still here. I was still breathing. I was still 32 years old with a job that helps people, and an apartment that is all mine, and a future that is completely unwritten. I got up. I made coffee. I drank it standing at the kitchen window, looking out at the parking lot and the trees and the ordinary morning of an ordinary day, and I smiled. Not because I was happy, not yet, but because I was free. Free from Ryan's lies, free from my mom's judgment, free from the weight of trying to be someone I was not. I thought about Teresa, the woman at the shelter who left her husband after 12 years. I thought about how hard it was for her, how terrified she must have been, how brave. I understood her now in a way I hadn't before. Leaving is hard, but staying is harder. Staying in a relationship that makes you feel small, staying in a family that makes you feel like a disappointment, staying in a life that was never really yours to begin with. I picked up my phone. I turned it back on. There were 12 messages. 3 from Ryan, 4 from my mom, 2 from Chloe, and 3 from a number I didn't recognize. I deleted all of them without reading. Then I scrolled to my contacts. I found the number for a therapist that my coworker had recommended months ago, the one I had been meaning to call but never did. I pressed call before I could talk myself out of it. A woman answered. She said, "Hello, this is Dr. Patterson's office." I said, "Hi, my name is Lauren, and I think I need to talk to someone." She said, "Can you come in next Wednesday at 2?" I said, "Yes, I can." I hung up. I finished my coffee. I went to work. And I started the slow, painful, beautiful work of building a life that belonged to no one but me. My mom called again that night. I let it go to voicemail. She said, "Lauren, I know you are angry. I know I made mistakes. But I am your mother. We need to figure this out. Please call me back." I didn't call her back. Not that night. Not the next night. Not for a long time. Because here's the thing about disappointment. It goes both ways. She called me a disappointment at my own birthday dinner. But the truth is, I was disappointed in her too. I was disappointed in Ryan. I was disappointed in Chloe. I was disappointed in all the people who were supposed to love me and protect me. And instead, they handed me a map and watched me walk off a cliff. But I was not disappointed in myself anymore. And that made all the difference. The weeks turned into months. Fall turned into winter. The holidays came and went. I spent Thanksgiving with a friend from work and her family. They were loud and chaotic, and they argued about politics and football and who ate the last roll. Nobody judged me. Nobody asked why I was alone. Nobody called me a disappointment. Christmas was harder. I sat in my apartment with a small tree that I bought from the grocery store, and a frozen lasagna, and a bottle of wine. I thought about calling my mom. My finger hovered over her name more times than I could count. But I didn't press it. I wasn't ready. I didn't know if I would ever be ready. Ryan came by once to get the last of his things. He stood on the porch looking miserable. He had lost weight. His face was pale. He said he was sorry again. He said he regretted everything. He said Megan meant nothing.
He said I was the love of his life. I handed him a box of kitchen stuff he had forgotten. I said, Ryan, I don't hate you, but I don't love you anymore either. I feel nothing, and that is worse than hate. He cried, actually cried, standing on my porch in the December cold with tears running down his face. He said he would wait for me. He said he would do anything to fix it. I closed the door. I locked it. I leaned against it, and I took a deep breath, and I felt nothing. Just the clean, empty silence of a woman who had finally stopped loving a man who didn't deserve her. Chloe showed up at my apartment in January. She brought a bottle of wine and a box of cookies, and an expression that said she had been practicing what she wanted to say. She sat on my couch and she apologized. A real apology, not the kind my mom gave. She said she was scared of our mom. She said she had spent her whole life keeping the peace because it was easier than fighting. She said she was sorry that she chose silence over standing up for me. I listened. I thanked her for coming. I told her I needed time. She nodded. She left the cookies. She said she would wait as long as it took. My mom kept calling. Every week. Every voicemail sounded a little different. The first ones were defensive. Then they became sad. Then they became something that sounded almost like real remorse. She said she was going to therapy. She said she was reading books about boundaries and communication and how to love a child without conditions. She said she was learning that the way she was raised was not an excuse for the way she treated me. I listened to every voicemail, and I saved them. Not because I was ready to forgive her, but because I wanted to remember that people can change, even people who hurt you, even people who called you a disappointment on your birthday. The last voicemail she left was on a Tuesday in March, the first day that felt like spring. She said, Lauren, I am not asking for forgiveness. I am not asking you to pretend nothing happened. I am just asking for a chance. 1 coffee, 1 hour. Let me show you that I am trying to be better. Let me earn a place in your life again. If you say no, I will understand, but I have to ask. I sat in my car in the parking lot of the shelter after work. The sun was setting. The sky was pink and orange and beautiful in a way that made my chest ache. I thought about my mom. I thought about Ryan. I thought about Chloe. I thought about all the people who had let me down and all the ways I had let myself down by staying quiet for so long. And I thought about the woman I was becoming, the woman who speaks up now, the woman who sets boundaries, the woman who knows that she is not a disappointment, no matter what anyone says. I picked up my phone. I typed a message to my mom. I said, coffee on Sunday, the cafe on 12th Avenue, noon. She wrote back in less than a minute. She said, thank you. I will be there. I love you. I didn't write back, I love you too. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I wrote, okay. And I hit send. Because healing is not a straight line. It is not a destination. It is 1,000 small choices made over and over again. Choosing to set a boundary. Choosing to let someone back in. Choosing to believe that you deserve love even when love has hurt you. Ryan sent me a message last week. He said he was seeing someone new. He said he wanted me to know that he finally understood what he lost. He said he would spend the rest of his life regretting it. I read the message. I deleted it. I did not respond. Because the truth is, I don't think about him anymore. Not really. Sometimes he appears in my dreams, but in the dreams he is always walking away, and I am always walking in the opposite direction, towards something I cannot see yet, something that feels like hope. My life is not what my mom wanted for me. I still work at the shelter. I still drive my 11-year-old car. I still live in my 1-bedroom apartment. None of that has changed. But I have changed. I am not the woman who sat at that birthday dinner with tears burning behind her eyes. I am not the woman who stayed silent while her mother tore her apart. I am not the woman who accepted a love that made her feel small.
I am 32 years old. I am single. I am not a disappointment. And for the first time in my life, I am exactly where I am supposed to be.